My sister told the whole family I only wanted the money after I spent 2 years caregiving for our dying parents and convinced everyone she deserved the entire inheritance. So I let her have it knowing the inheritance was actually just debt. I was the one who fed our father his pills 3 times a day for 2 years, the one who slept on a fold-out couch in the den so our mother wouldn't be alone after he died, the one who quit a job and moved across the state when nobody else would even visit. My sister Margot showed up for the funerals and the holidays and the photos. That was the extent of her contribution. When the will turned out to be vague, naming both of us as equal beneficiaries without anyone bothering to update it, I assumed we would split things down the middle. That assumption fell apart fast. Margot walked into the lawyer's office in a blazer with her arms crossed and announced to the room that she had spoken to the family, and everyone agrees she should get everything. The house, the savings, the small bit of land our father had bought decades ago, all of it. I sat there waiting for someone to laugh. Nobody did. Our Aunt Kalani nodded along. Our Uncle Herbert would not even look at me. When I asked what exactly Margot had told them, she tilted her head like I was a slow child and said the 6 words she would end up regretting more than anything else in her life. You only ever wanted the money. While I was changing bedpans and learning to give injections and finding our mother crying in the bathtub, she had been working on this for months. I had been the greedy one, the hoverer, the schemer, the one positioning myself for the payout. And because Margot is the kind of person who can cry on command and remembers everyone's birthday and brings the right wine to dinner, the entire family believed her. The lawyer looked at me. I looked at my hands. The paperwork for the last 18 months had passed through my hands, so I knew what was in those folders. Margot had never opened one. Buried in those papers was a second mortgage our father had taken out before his diagnosis to pay for a treatment that did not work. Property taxes had been quietly piling up because our mother had been too tired to deal with them. 2 credit cards in our father's name were already sitting in collections. A loan he had co-signed for a cousin who had vanished 4 years ago was about to come due. On top of all of that, the state had placed a lien on the house for Medicaid recovery. None of it was a secret to anyone willing to read. Margot had not been willing. All she had ever done was show up for the photos and tell people how hard it all was for her. So I told the lawyer I would not contest the will and wanted it on the record that I was giving up every claim. He stared at me, then asked if I was sure. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. Margot smiled. In that wounded, saintly voice of hers, she thanked me and said she was glad I had finally done the right thing. Every paper they put in front of me got signed. Then I drove home and waited. 3 weeks later, the phone started ringing. Margot first, then Kalani, then Herbert, then Margot again. The first call from Margot came in at full volume. A panicked tumble of questions about the mortgage, the taxes, the cards, and the lien on the house. Very calmly, I let her know that I had been the one filing those papers for the last year and a half, and yes, every bit of it was familiar. The tone shifted. Now I had to help her. Now this was a family problem, and we needed to figure it out together. Walking away from this was not an option, she said. She used the exact phrase our father used to use when he was guilting one of us into something, and I let her finish the whole speech before answering. My answer was simple. She had told the entire family I only wanted the money. She had told the lawyer she deserved every cent. She had thanked me, in front of witnesses, for doing the right thing by giving her everything. Since every single thing was what she had wanted, every single thing was what she now had, and none of it was coming back. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then her voice came back smaller than I had ever heard it, and she said there was one page in the folder the lawyer had never seen. Before I could ask what was on it, I heard a man's voice in the background telling her to hang up the phone. I did not call her back. Whatever Margot was doing, she had let something slip that she did not mean to, and the smart move was to follow the thread before she had time to cover it up. So the next morning, I called Takeshi, our father's lawyer. He picked up carefully, the way lawyers get when they know a conversation could go somewhere uncomfortable. I asked him straight out if any documents were missing from the estate file. The pause went on long enough that I almost asked again, and then he said, "Everything I received is everything that was in the estate folder." It was the kind of answer that technically says something without actually saying anything, but then his tone changed, quieter, like he was choosing every word on purpose. "Your sister came in 2 days before the meeting. She said she wanted to look things over. I left her alone with the file for about 20 minutes. I should not have done that. I asked him directly if a page could have been removed. He did not say yes. He did not say no. What he said was, if you want, I can send you a copy of the full inventory list your father's accountant filed. You can compare it to what was in the folder yourself." I told him to send it. He said he would have it to me by end of day. He did not offer anything else, and I did not push. But the fact that he brought up Margot's visit on his own, without me asking, told me he had been thinking about it too. The email came through that evening. I opened it at my dining table with a cup of coffee I never ended up drinking. The inventory list was 3 pages long, listing every document placed in the estate folder. I pulled out the copies I had kept from the signing day, because 2 years of handling our father's paperwork had taught me to never let a document leave my hands without a backup. I went through the inventory line by line, matching each item to the copies in my stack. The mortgage was there, the tax documents were there, the credit card statements, the lien notice, the deed to the house, the title to the land, all of it matched up, until I got to page 2, item 14. Handwritten addendum, dated March 7th, estate-related personal letter addressed to younger daughter. I checked my copies, nothing matching that description. I went through the whole stack again, slower this time, pulling each page out and reading the headers. Nothing. I checked a third time because I did not want to believe what I was looking at. There was no handwritten letter in anything Takeshi had presented at the reading. It had been in the folder when the accountant filed the inventory. It was gone by the time I sat down in that office. And I am the younger daughter. Our father Hiram had written something by hand, addressed it to me, and put it in the estate file 3 months before he died. 3 months before, when he was sick, but still clear enough to hold a pen and think about what he wanted to say. Margot had walked into that office, sat alone with the folder for 20 minutes, and walked out with my letter in her hands. I called our mother Isolde the next morning. Her voice was thin and tired in a way that made my chest hurt. I kept my voice gentle. I asked her if our father had ever mentioned writing anything by hand near the end, anything personal, maybe a letter or a note. The line went quiet in a way that meant she was remembering something she had not thought about in a while. Then she said, "He asked me for an envelope one night. I thought he was writing writing to the insurance company. He made me promise not to open it. I asked where the envelope ended up. She said, Margot asked about it the day after the funeral. I told her it was in the folder at the lawyer's office. I did not think anything of it. She said it simply, like passing along that information had been as normal as telling someone where the spare key was. She had no reason to think Margot would open a sealed envelope meant for someone else and hide it, but that is exactly what happened. A few days later, I drove across town to check on Isolde. There were packages sitting by the front door that looked like they had been there for days. One had rain damage. The garden beds our father used to spend Sunday mornings fussing over were full of weeds. I let myself in with the key I had never given back, and the smell hit me right away. Stale, like windows had not been opened in a long time. The dining room was worse than I expected. Isolde was sitting at the table surrounded by envelopes. Some opened and spread flat, most still sealed. A few were addressed to Margot, because the estate transfer had put Margot's name on the property, so anything tied to the house was now routing here. She looked up at me, tired in a way that goes all the way down to the bones, and said, Margot told me she was going to take care of all of this. I pulled out the chair across from her and asked when she had last heard from Margot. Isolde counted back. 11 days. Margot had promised our grieving mother she would handle everything, taken the entire inheritance, and then disappeared for almost 2 weeks while the mail piled up and the house fell apart around the woman who raised us. I started going through the envelopes. The lien notice had been upgraded to a formal demand for payment. The second mortgage company had sent a letter with default warning in bold across the top. The county assessor said property taxes were 4 months past due, and that if no payment was received, the next step would be a tax sale process. Margot had not answered a single one. Not one response, not one phone call, not one payment. And Isolde, sitting there in the middle of all of it, had no idea what any of it meant. She thought the house was paid off. Your father paid it off years ago, she said while I was reading the default warning, and there is a savings account. Margot said she would move the money over to cover any small bills. There was no savings account. Everything Isolde believed about her own financial situation was a story Margot had told her, and Margot had told it knowing it was a lie, because keeping Isolde calm and quiet meant keeping Isolde out of the way. Before I left, Isolde said something that stopped me cold. Your father always said you were the one who would hold this family together. Margot never liked hearing that. Then she told me our father had once compared Margot to his own sister, right in front of both of them, the one who smiled at everyone and stole from the church collection plate. Margot had not spoken to him for 2 months after that, and suddenly the whole thing made a different kind of sense. Margot did not just want the inheritance because she was greedy. She wanted it because she needed to prove our father wrong. She needed to be the good daughter, the one the family trusted, the one who deserved everything. The inheritance was never really about money for Margot. It was about erasing what Hiram saw when he looked at her. It was about proving, to a dead man who could no longer argue back, that he had been wrong about his own daughter. I was halfway down the front steps when my phone buzzed. A text from Margot. We need to meet. Just us. Then a second. I have the letter. You need to see it. Something had made her desperate enough to give up the one piece of leverage she had been sitting on. Margot does not give things away. She trades them. I did not text her back that night. I put my phone face down on the counter and left it there. I needed to think without Margot's voice in my head, even if it was just words on a screen. Let her sit with the silence. The next afternoon, about 24 hours later, my phone rang. Not Margot, Kalani, the same woman who had sat in that lawyer's office nodding along with every word Margot said, who had not contacted me once since that day, not to check on me, not even a text on my birthday. The woman on the other end sounded nothing like the Kalani from the lawyer's office. The confidence was gone. She sounded small and nervous, and like she had been working up the courage to dial my number for a while. Did your father owe money on that house? I told her yes. I did not dress it up. The line went quiet. Then I heard her take a long breath, the kind you take when you are about to say something that hurts. Margot asked me for a loan last week, she said. She said it was temporary, just to cover some paperwork fees. She asked for $12,000. I asked if she gave it to her. Kalani's voice cracked right down the middle. I gave her 8. That was everything in my savings account. She said I would get it back in 30 days. Then she told me about a man. Margot had brought him to dinner and introduced him as a financial advisor. He did most of the talking. He kept saying the estate had hidden value and that Margot just needed bridge funding to unlock it. He said the land alone was worth 6 figures. Our father's land. A narrow strip of dirt behind a gas station that Hiram had bought decades ago because someone at his job told him it was a good deal. It was worth almost nothing, and anyone who spent 5 minutes looking into it would know that. Someone had told Margot it was a gold mine, and Margot had believed it because she needed to. And then Margot had turned around and told Kalani the same lie so she could pull $8,000 out of our aunt's savings account. I asked Kalani to describe the man. Tall, well-dressed, talked fast, used words that sounded smart but did not really say anything. Never met him before that dinner. Did not catch his last name. I already knew who he was. The voice that told Margot to hang up that night. That was Kurt. And now he was showing up at family dinners pretending to be a financial advisor, lying about land values, and helping Margot ask relatives for thousands of dollars. Kurt was not helping Margot manage the estate. Kurt was using Margot. He had attached himself to a desperate woman sitting on top of what looked, from the outside, like a pile of assets, and he was using her to squeeze money out of everyone around her. The family was being drained by a man none of them really knew, through a woman all of them trusted. I texted Margot, I will meet you, tomorrow, at the house, just us. Bring the letter. Her reply came back in less than 10 seconds. Thank you, I mean it. Margot saying I mean it was like the sky saying it was blue. It did not make it true. It was just what she said when she wanted you to stop questioning her. The next call I made was to Everly, my best friend, the one person who had been there through all of it not because she had to be, but because she chose to be. I told her everything. The letter, the inventory, Takeshi admitting Margot had been alone with the file, Isolde and the envelope, Kalani and the $8,000, Kurt, all of it. Everly listened without interrupting, which is how I knew she was taking it seriously, because Everly is not a quiet person. When I finished, she said, you are walking into something. You know that, right? I told her I knew. Then I am going with you, she said. I will wait in the car. If you are not out in 30 minutes, I am coming in. That night, I lay in bed and could not shut my brain off. My father wrote me a letter. 3 months before he died, when the disease had taken so much from him but had not yet taken his mind, he sat down and wrote wrote something meant for me. He knew what was coming. Not just the dying, though he knew that too. He knew what would happen after. He had looked at Margot and seen exactly what she would do. The same way he had seen it years before when he made that comparison to his own sister. He knew Margot would come for everything, and he tried to leave me something she could not reach. But she reached it anyway. She walked into that office, sat down with the folder, found the letter, read words that were never meant for her eyes, and put it in her purse. And then she stood in that room and she smiled and she said, "I only wanted the money." She said it while my father's last words to me were folded up in her bag. Everly picked me up the next morning and we drove to the house without saying much. Margot's car was already in the driveway. Everly parked across the street and pulled out her phone. 30 minutes, she said. I nodded and got out. The front door was unlocked. The house still smelled stale, like no one had opened a window since I was here with Isolde. Margot was sitting at the dining table, the same table where our mother had been buried in envelopes she could not understand, and she looked different, thinner than the last time I saw her. Her eyes were red and puffy. She was holding a folded piece of paper in both hands. She did not say hello. She did not say sorry. The first words out of her mouth were, "I took the letter because I read it first, and it was not fair." I said nothing. I stood there and let her keep going. She looked down at the paper and said, "He wrote things about me in there, things a father should never put in writing about his own daughter." I asked her what it said. She slid the paper across the table toward me but kept her hand pressed flat on top of it. "Before you read it, I need you to agree to something. I need you to help me with the house, with the debt, with all of it. I cannot do this alone. And Kurt says if we do not come up with the mortgage payment by the end of the month, we lose everything." I looked at her hand on the letter. My father's handwriting was under her palm. I asked her who Kurt was. Her face got tight. "He is helping me. He understands finance." I said, "He told Kalani the land behind the gas station is worth 6 figures. That is not finance. That is a lie." Margot's jaw moved to the side. "You talked to Kalani?" "Kalani called me," I said, "because you asked her for $12,000 and she wants to know if she is getting it back." Margot pulled the letter back toward herself. "So this is what you are doing," she said, "turning everyone against me." I kept my voice even. "You turned everyone against me 6 months ago in a lawyer's office. You told them I only wanted the money. You smiled when I signed everything over. You thanked me for doing the right thing. Now you are sitting in a house full of debt with a man nobody knows telling you what to do. And you are asking me for help while holding a letter my dying father wrote to me. So give me the letter, Margot." Her fingers pressed harder on the paper. "If I give you this, will you help me?" "Give me the letter because it is mine," I said, "not because of a deal." She stared at me. The room was so quiet I could hear the faucet dripping. Then her hand went slack and she let go. I picked up the letter and unfolded it. Hiram's handwriting, shaky the way it got toward the end, but every word was clear. The letter was short. He said he knew the estate was a mess. He was sorry he could not fix it in time. He knew Margot would try to take everything, because that is who Margot has always been. And he did not write it with anger. He wrote it with sadness, the kind of sadness a father carries when he loves a child he cannot trust. And then the last line. He had set aside a small life insurance policy years ago, one that was not part of the estate. I was listed as the sole beneficiary. The policy number was written at the bottom of the page. Margot had seen that number and assumed it was about the inheritance, because Margot does not read financial documents. She never has. I read it a second time. My hands were shaking so bad the paper was moving. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. Margot was watching me like a cat watching a door. "What does it say about the money?" she asked. I looked at my sister and I said, "It says he loved me, and he knew exactly who you are." Her face did not crumble with sadness. It crumbled with fury. "That is not what it says," she snapped. "There is a number on there." I saw a number. "What is the number?" I stood up from the table. "The number is mine, Margot," I said. "Like the letter was mine. Like the 2 years were mine. Like every single hard day was mine while you showed up for photos." Margot stood up too, and her voice went high and tight, almost a scream, but not quite. "You are going to walk out of here with money while I drown? After everything?" I was already at the door. I stopped. I turned around, and I said it quietly. The quietest I had said anything in that whole conversation. "You told a room full of people that I only ever wanted the money. So let me ask you something. If the inheritance had been worth $500,000 and no debt, would you be sitting here asking me to split it? Would you have called me at all?" Margot did not answer. She just stood there behind the dining table with her red eyes and her empty hands, and she did not say a single word. The silence said everything. I walked out and got into Everly's car and sat there for a minute, not moving, not talking. Everly looked at me and asked if I was okay. I said, "My dad wrote me a letter." I did not say anything else for a long time. I called the insurance company the next day and gave them the policy number. It was real. It was active. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to cover a deposit on an apartment and a few months of breathing room while I found work again. It was enough to start over. I called Isolde and told her the truth about the debt, gently, over the course of a long afternoon. She cried. Then she said, "Your father always said you would be the one." I asked the one to do what? She said, "The one who stayed when it got hard." Margot did not call again. Kalani called once to ask about her $8,000. I told her to ask Margot. I never heard from Herbert at all. Kurt disappeared the way people like Kurt always do, once there is nothing left to take. I folded my father's letter and put it in a drawer. I already knew what it said.